difficulties that we had. China came out of the pandemic first, ahead of all the rest of the world. Located here in southwest China is a good place to be because southwest China is growing beyond the rest of China. So we were able to come out quickly and recover quickly and actually grow faster than we ever anticipated. But we're a manufacturing company, and I know other manufacturing companies in a similar position. There are other companies located here which are not so fortunate. Those in the service industry, which were looking after clients that were coming in from abroad, businesses that were seeking relocation and support from SMEs run by foreign entities. Many people were unable to get back to China. They got stuck in Europe or in other countries and couldn't get back. And some people are still stuck with their families outside of China. I worry for those companies, the service companies, that relied on visits by foreign suppliers, by foreign entities that want to do business with Chinese companies, that want to do business with foreign companies located, and they can't do it anymore. So I think this is a big issue that I hope the government here can take more action on to support these SMEs that relied on these the travel, which has now basically dried up. So yeah, that's depends what SME. You mentioned how you're about different types of SMEs. Manufacturing, service area, quite different. Hotel industries, they're not SMEs, but they suffered heavily. And still, when we get these ups and downs of restrictions of travel that are happening even now, that affects businesses quite significantly.
So with the turbulence that happens, is it still possible to get financing for companies, or is it still one of the biggest challenges? Once you get financing, it can smooth over some of this turbulence and risk.
So financing has always been an issue. I mean, as I said, I've been here a long time, and we've tried to get financing from any one of the main banks in Chengdu. Even foreign banks are reluctant to support SMEs. We brought it up, and the European Chamber has brought this issue up in the past as well with the local government. And we've been told the government's quite happy to support businesses, SMEs, there's no issue with the government. The issue tends to be with the banks needing to acknowledge there is a certain amount of risk, but look at the operation of that company and say, this company looks like it's doing well, it's been doing well, and we can take that risk. Up until recently, the CEO of the company, the managing director of the company, was asked to take on board all that risk by the bank. The bank would come in and offer a loan and say, you sign here and you give me your property as guarantee and I'll give you the loan. But that's not something that's it's certainly something we wouldn't expect in the West. And it is changing. So I'm very pleased that after a recent meeting last year, we were told by the Kaohsiung district government, go to a particular bank and they will look at your business and may be able to give you a loan. They actually did that, so we succeeded. The only thing that worries me is that the Kaohsiung district government offered at the time a rebate on the interest of 0.8%. When we went to get the loan, and I said, well, okay, can we sign the deal with the government for the 1.8%? They said, oh no, that's a policy which you have to apply for when the loan has been paid back. Which I thought, surprise. So this is an issue. You've got this opportunity to get the rebate, but there's no guarantee when you sign the actual loan. You have to wait and apply later. So these kinds of things for small companies can be quite difficult to manage because your cost that you had anticipated has suddenly gone up think the government needs to take a better look at how they can support SMEs and understand that we don't have as much money as the big Fortune 500 companies, and we need a bit more support.
Absolutely agree. Now, you're from the manufacturing industry sector, and Raquel, you're from the services sector. So, what are the main challenges your SME has faced when operating in Western China?
Hi, thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you all to speak of SMEs and not only the challenges we face, but also perhaps strategies we can take on to overcome the challenges that we face. If I may, I'd first like to start talking about the importance of SMEs. Because the other day I was quite surprised, I was reading how SMEs in China are actually the backbone of the private sector. Actually, I have some numbers here that would be quite surprising for you if you don't know this, but they contribute more than 50% of tax revenue. They contribute 60% of China's GDP, 70% of technology innovation, 80% of urban employment, and 90% of new jobs and firms. So it just escalates. And that, I think, really can give us a clear idea of the importance that SMEs have and the pivotal role they play in economy and in green economy. I also really enjoyed reading about this, it was a German writer, and he coined SMEs as the hidden champions. I don't know if you've heard that. And it refers to SMEs and the strong role in leadership they can definitely take on and impact as a link in the industrial chain, in boosting resilience, as you mentioned, and also in developing more high-quality development in general. So I really wanted to start with that because as we talk about the challenges, we need to keep in mind why it's important to overcome these challenges. So if I may, as I gathered information, I had a chance to identify two prevailing groups of challenges that I'd like to speak to today. First, I'd like to talk about the first prevailing group of challenges that encompass strategic partnerships. And with that, many of the challenges for the SMEs are sort of things like recruitment, effectively understanding policies and procedures. Oftentimes, there's a language and cultural barrier for many, especially foreign SMEs, to understand the expectations and demands that they need to, follow through with. Also, oftentimes, infrastructure. Something as simple as finding a space can also be, especially for small SMEs, very small SMEs, is an interesting and very important aspect that can be a challenge, right? Connections and business services. I'd like to talk about a specific case study of a company that I work with. It's called ITTC, and it's International Technology Transformation Center. And they, as an SME, identified early on that there's a huge demand for global technology innovation. So therefore, they've honed their energy in creating a channel to connect foreign and local technology. So that's the first part. The second part is I want to speak to the success they've had in receiving Chengdu municipal government support. It's been key to really empower them to they dedicate themselves to giving straightforward solutions, and they've been able to really build online and offline a multi-factor collaboration network. And if you're an SME, you know that is key, to be able to have a network with both foreign and local technology-focused SMEs in order to grow. They also prioritize technology introduction as well as cooperation in green and environmental economies. And so this is the beginning of seeing a prioritization that is key for us to be able to advance that. Lastly, and more importantly, I'd like to mention them as a wonderful study case because they directly find strategic partners for other SMEs, as well as support SMEs in strategically positioning them in the market, especially the Chinese market, which, as you know, most of the time is challenging for foreign companies when it comes to context, environment, and cultural aspects of business, especially in Southwest China. Now, I mention this because I think it's really important to view it from all sides. So there's also fortunately been successes in receiving the support and then also being a hub to support. In having strategic relationships and partnerships are key to be able to succeed as a small and medium enterprise. May I mention the second one? Thank you. So, as I continue to try to find what strategic solutions we could bring to the table, and I also gathering information not only of my own experience, but of other SMEs, I realized that the second biggest challenge and group of challenges pertain to branding and transitioning to green. So in that, many of them find it very difficult to difference themselves from other companies who do similar things. They also struggle to get accessibility and visibility among local and foreign markets. And then lastly, navigating Chinese marketing channels. Every day it seems like a new one pops up, and I think it's really important to understand the challenges and the complexities that that represents for SMEs. I, with these challenges, want to point out the key role that women play and can play in both branding and green transitioning. Because women are powerful agents of change, as you may all know, and specifically for green transition and differentiation of your company. Empowering women economically actually propels growth and prosperity all across the board, no matter your industry. And it also reduces suffering on all fronts, including environmental. Women play a vital role in greening economies. In many countries, women already are embracing the greening economies and are engaging and so on, such as women farmers, such as women taking roles like forest stewardess, as natural resource managers, and entrepreneurs. Women are distinct multipliers of investments made in them. And this is because of their spending habits. So when women are invested in, their spending habits go way beyond their households. They not only impact their direct family, their children, their husband, perhaps their own parents and parents-in-laws and so on, but they also impact the well-being of their communities. And in this, women, it's important to remember, are consumers, producers, and workers. They encompass the entire supply chain. And in this, they play a very crucial role in benefiting green economies and also reaping the benefits that green economies give. Actually, Harvard Business Review, which is one of my favorite sources, they estimated that women are much more likely to buy recyclable. They're much more likely to actually invest and buy in eco-friendly labels, and are much more conscientious in their buys in energy-efficient products. Therefore, women economic empowerment affects patterns of household spending, and they're much more likely to increase demand for sustainable products and services. So as you can see, they are leading a significant, and can be leading a significant growth and impact on green growth and economy. Women are poised, they very much are, and research shows it, they are poised to propel the green economy. And we often don't have these conversations and mention this very important, crucial role that women have. Women very much in the demand of professional training in green sectors that we need in order to further that agenda and sustainable business practices, provide an untapped resource for green growth. Ultimately, we need to invest in women-owned businesses that use sustainable practices along the entire supply chain. We need to capitalize the opportunities to help women grow their businesses simultaneously, at the same time advancing green economic growth. If I may, I'd like to offer, just to have the most complete answer and bring to you your attention, additional action steps that overall encompass, I think, SMEs and how they may overcome challenges. In that, it's very important, as we all understand, to have an overarching view and support of the leadership in order to really drive not only the message, but the goals and the purpose for the different goals that we're going to establish. So in this case, it would be important that the leadership of every SME prioritizes women and green economy. And how can they do that? Having a clear commitment to global and green economy, with an introduction and a very strong framework that's going to offer the possibility to promote sustainable patterns in the consumption and in the production, viewing it as a whole and not only different aspects of it, correct? Setting up targeted incentives, right? So in order to have these very specific goals, we can also set up targeted incentives that's going to motivate not only the leadership, but everybody within the company. We have to create environments that are going to enable us to be able to achieve these goals. And really, finally, we as SMEs, we need to be proactive in cultivating connections. We need to be proactive in finding those strategic relationships or working with companies like ITTC to enable us to have more reach to other strategic partnerships that will help us be able to reach our goals. And lastly, really, it's important to keep the engagement of our stakeholders also sharing the same goals, and in this case, the green transition.
Thank you. I know you're really passionate about educating, so I really hope that with this knowledge that you also take this forward into your academy as well.
Very much do, thank you.
So what we've heard from Paul and Raquel about both manufacturing and services environment. It's quite clear that a lot of the change can come from businesses, not just government. What we have already seen from the Chengdu government, who've actually been progressing this since 2017, they've done a number of iterations, even demonstration zones. So it takes both the government and businesses to actually make change towards an ecological civilization. Liam.
Yes.
Could you please tell us a little bit more detail in the context of the EU Green Deal and China's pledge to become more carbon neutral? What are the business benefits and costs of going green for SMEs?
Sure, indeed. I have to be honest, I did not prepare a long narrative paragraph, but I actually joined this panel as a backup. Was one of our panelists.
You're not backup.
But I think I still have some interesting information. Thank you. To steer up the discussion a little bit, because and indeed like a very good question, first of all, Ali, because I think that's indeed the logic of SME considering green transition, considering going green. If you look at what our function is as EU SME Centre, we support SMEs entering the market by first of all raising the awareness. What is available in the market in China? Which resources? And is there a market after all for your businesses? So first of all, for SMEs, I think there's a question for SMEs in Europe. I'm talking about the first question you need to consider is that should they go green or not? And I talk about this supported by some statistics from last year's annual SME report. Only 37% of SMEs in Europe has implemented this sustainability plan. Considering how important SME contributes to the economy, considering how important SME green transition serve the bigger picture of economic transition in Europe, I think that's a relatively low percentage. The challenges also lies in that for SMEs, especially micro SMEs, who has even less resources compared to medium-sized SMEs, is that, and of course, like Fulvio has introduced, the short-term economic benefits is definitely something they are carefully considered, and which is not largely available in all sectors. In the energy sector, the increase of energy efficiency could eventually possibly bring short-term economic incentives for SMEs, but not for all sectors at all. That's obviously one very big challenge, and of course, the financial support, access to finance, as also Paul has introduced, also contributes to these discussions. So that's, I think, part of the problems or the challenges that SMEs are facing when considering going green. And then coming back to the market in China, because of the fact that we are here, we also work with SMEs who are already in the market. Yesterday I was able to share also at a panel about digitalization of SMEs, which I think contributes largely to the reduce of environmental impact as well as exactly the sustainability of the SME themselves. The China market is not mature at all, and this remark I make by after collecting feedbacks from some of the very digitalized European SMEs who are operating on the China market. I can give examples of this. When it comes to procurement, procurement in China for European SMEs started with a lot of problems, which by now some of them has been tackled and some still remain challenging. When it comes to digitalization of SMEs, in many cases the solutions provided are still based on challenges of yesterday, which resulted, or which in a way shows the situation, that the procurers are still highly inadequate. This says more about procurers than procurement makers. As well, some of the other challenges that digitalization, for example, SMEs are facing in China is, again, accessing to Chinese available fundings that many policies, many Chinese associations provide. There are platforms available, however, not largely still to all SMEs, especially in many very niche markets.
It's almost like you're touching upon key points of all of our panelists. You find potentially make a strategic partner, you have the right investment, you're going to be able to create innovations that can effectively improve the operations of the business.
Yes, indeed, exactly that. And here the point I want to make is still again about the market. If you look, we're talking about highly developed, highly digitalized solutions that European SMEs are providing, which in many cases are also not necessarily demanded. Meaning that.
Are you encouraging more cooperation between Chinese companies and Europeans?
I think we're not there yet, but here I want to point out this challenge is that in the China market, in many cases, the cheap bulk solutions are still preferred by the market. So in a way, we also put a question mark: is digitalization or is going green actually worth it for companies considering the market in China? That's again, I think, something that will request further discussions, exchanges from starting from the government level, eventually to policymakers, and eventually also for businesses to exchange on such topics. I don't have a conclusion to draw here, so I throw it back to you.
I just have a few more questions because if it's okay, even open up to the panel.
Yes, please.
Now, Liam, you said that what you want to do is initially create awareness about going green. Raquel said SMEs is, forms the backbone of the economy. So what is actually stopping majority of the SMEs in accelerating this process? We know it's important, we know it's going to help improve business performance. There is some awareness, but I almost feel like the movement isn't fast enough. What do you think is happening?
That's also a question we want to figure out ourselves. Because SME Centre, we've been here for more than 10 years in China. We're still not visible for many SMEs in Europe.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to.
Still on? Okay. The research is there, to be really honest with you. The United Nations and the different organs of the United Nations have done ample research. So I think that the evidence is there to show that it really is advantageous in the long run for humankind. And I know that sounds very romantic, but the reality is I think we're all feeling the changes in climate change and how it's truly impacting our world. We can see it in the news. And so what I mean by that is there are huge advantages. I understand that it may be costly at the beginning, but in the long run, they say that it is much more efficient in many aspects. So the research is there. I fully agree with you that awareness has to be the very beginning, right? In order to change people's mindsets, we need to drive it by self-awareness, by the awareness of understanding that it is and no longer questioning it. I think my frustration lies in that it's still questioned, whereas so much research has shown that it is pivotal. I would wonder, because we always mention these challenges, but really, how can we, find the funds, right? What are the pathways that people can follow? And language continues to be, in my experience and those of my colleagues, my partnering, SMEs, or not even, we're not partners, but we have a relationship, that language barrier. We have a lot of foreign companies coming to China that don't speak the language, that don't read, Hansa. So what is it, and these wonderful platforms may exist, but how do we, cross that, right? How do we unify these efforts?
I wanted to provide a little bit of a view on, say, okay, why is this movement now happening? I think we really need to separate really two points. I would say you have an item which is on the external environment, external constraints. We talk finance, we talk a lot of even access to knowledge. There's a lot which is external environment which is perceived as SMEs do not have an impact on, cannot influence enough. And then you have the internal environment, which could be structure, resources, organization, and even business strategy, the innovation and everything. So you have these two points. And I would say when it comes to the external one, there is, despite there are a lot of organizations out there, Chamber of Commerce, but I think a lot of the SMEs, they live in the perception that, okay, they don't have enough resources, first of all, time. So for them, it's like, I'm not going to put money and time into this because I don't have it. But that actually prevents them to have any role, any voice into influencing that environment. So that is, I think, point one, which is very significant. For example, I think the example of the financing was very important. It's something that every individual SMEs will go to a bank and a bank will do what you want. But in fact, if you go as part, if you build, as part of an organization, Chamber of Commerce or anything, that you have a different role. You have a voice that builds up. Same thing. It could even be applied into the women leadership. You through a partnership, you find more innovation. You find your voice. You build up what is difficult to build at one single SME. So that is when it comes to the outside. I think SMEs need to find. To give up the concept, the mind frame that there's not enough resources to invest into partnership or to participate into organization, because that will be a key item to break through some of these barriers that seems not respectable by SMEs. Inside, I think that is more like instead of a lot of mind frame, it could be women empowerment, it could be knowledge, but that has really a lot to do with the strategy. But I think what I have to say, and maybe is my own opinion, I think you either do it all the way or you don't do it. Mine is that, like, if you want to go for sustainability as an SME, don't do the small steps, because you may as well not do it. Just go for the cheapest option, and it's okay. Maybe you'll find your niche through that, or it's your market. But if you start the process, then you better do it the full way. And by that I mean, just an example, you imagine, if you are a giant, Shunfeng, and you want to do on the recyclable packaging for them, you're going to affect the whole China. Yes. If you are a small company which ships online, your environmental packaging is a nice idea, but it's not really going to have a very big impact unless your entire structure, your entire offer is about sustainability. It's not only the packaging, but then what is inside and your raw material and the way you communicate has nothing to do with it.
There is an argument that you could start small initially and then build up as well.
Probably. and I am not an expert on that. My feeling is that if your idea is to start small, you will stay small, and you will not build up. Because I think, actually, the point is that you will not use maybe the only advantages that SMEs have, which is the flexibility. The flexibility even to challenge, to change the organization I mean, there's less people, so you can engage the entire organization in thinking in a different way. That means that when you engage with your customer, when you engage with everyone will think, you know, in a different pattern. And that is something that a small organization can do much more easily. So you will think everyone in your organization, once you engage them in thinking about sustainability, you know, can come out, can really, you know, flourish the innovation. Some ideas that, you know, the boss will not have, and it's not only about, you know, the typical things, the one recyclable packaging, but everything will be about, in a way, will be really much embedded into the offer and the process and the culture. So in that way, actually, will transform much more the perception, and that way, I think, can become really an innovation and an advantage. But I think if you just, you know, start with the idea small, maybe it's a beginning, but very often, you know, you get into the, okay, I've done my thing, you know, I've done my great thing, and
it's a token gesture.
Yeah.
So what I can see is from these panelists, Liam, Paul, and Raquel, they represent their own respective communities. It would be very nice, as a moderator says, it could be more of a unified voice to promote green transition externally, and even with Raquel's education, for example, to embody green transitions from an internal corporation from the beginning, from inside.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in. I mean, the environmental aspect it is something that SMEs or businesses that are dealing with the rest of the world have to come to terms with, because we have customers that are now demanding that our products are labelled with ROHS, or the company has, you know, ISO 14001, whatever it is. They're demanding, or they're suggesting, that if we don't have these compliances, they may not buy from us. The thing is that when you're a company like ours, and I'm sure many other SME manufacturers that are dealing with other companies in China, is that we may take on that role and say, okay, we must do this in order to supply our products to the right environmental standards. Then when we go to our sub-suppliers and we say, hey guys, are you following any kind of standards? They look at, is it appropriate? Did we make something wrong? No. Have you got any standards? They look blank because they don't understand the concept in many ways. We had an issue a couple of years ago when the pollution was very bad here in Chengdu, and the government cracked down, rightly so, on many companies that were infringing the law and not properly removing pollutants from the environment, paint sprayers and engineering workshops. And that basically was a big issue for us, and our sub-suppliers were shut down for a couple of months. And our sub-suppliers said, oh, it's okay, they'll forget about it soon. That's a big issue. I think in order to deal with it, we need to deal with it properly. The government needs to take hold of this. This is a great opportunity to get the message out there, this conference. Grab hold of it and live with it. They have goals they want to achieve by 2050, 2030 and 2050. The only way they can do that is by really cracking down on all the companies, implementing standards.